This episode of the Party Loaded podcast is proudly sponsored by Audible.com. Check out their awesome catalogue of audiobooks with over 180,000 titles to choose from. And be sure to grab a free audiobook on us and support the show by visiting audibletrial.com/endgame.
Let's party.
Welcome, one and all, to the Party Loaded podcast for the 20th of March. This is your weekly hit of everything great in the world of video games, of course. I'm one of your hosts, Luke Ritalik, partying up tonight with Mr. Christian Paulson Brown. How you doing?
Good man. Thank you for having me, as always.
Absolutely. We have the artist currently known as Jam. Hello?
Yarr.
No, not formally yet. You haven't been killed on the high seas just as of this moment.
I want to call my ship the Jammy Dodger.
Oh, really?
That's a good name.
The SS Jammy Dodger. I don't even know if I can name it yet.
I think that you should festoon it with cannons and call it the Black Betty.
Oh, it's festooned with cannons. So,
there'll be tons
I've been
of Black
playing
Betties
Sea
out
of
there.
Thieves.
Yeah, but in this
Sea of
particular
Thieves is
case,
fun.
Jam behind a cannon is Jam Blam, so that makes a whole lot of sense to me.
There's been no cannon fire yet. So Sea of Thieves came out today. I've played 1 hour, which was squished in right before this. I jumped into a friend's game. We had 4. We figured out how to maneuver the galleon, hit a few things, it was kind of funny.
Have you vomited in anyone's face yet? That's what I really want to know.
Not yet.
Listeners
Not
demand
yet.
to know.
But then on our second trip, we lost our 4th, but we understood what we were doing better. And we had another 4th jump in halfway back from finding our loot. And it was beautiful because suddenly we were sailing through the seas. We knew when to go to half sail. And then as we turned in, we'd lose a few more sails, slowly glide, drop anchor. We put up right next to the dock. And suddenly we feel like pros, completely forgetting that we haven't encountered any other soul yet in the game. So the second we do, we're going to sink.
Yeah.
But now we know how to fix the hull. We know how to tack reasonably well. We know how to find the loot. You follow the treasure map to dig in the X. It's kind of funny. We know how to drink. We know how to emote at each other. It's a bit ridiculous. Discovered there's fall damage when a couple of people fell from the crow's nest.
Oh, I can see that being a thing. Okay.
There was one moment where we're approaching, and Ari and I were doing stupid Titanic rubbish off the prow. And they're like, raise the sails, raise the sails. There was a huge crunch. But, we fixed it. It's fine. We only needed to bucket a little bit.
Nice.
So that was hilarious.
I'm super
first
looking forward to jumping in.
It's fun, great with a group of friends. The in-game chat was awful, and we've disabled it, and we're just using Discord. And I can't wait to jump back in, so let's hurry up.
Yep.
Is it the kind of game, Jam, that you really need to be talking to your shipmates?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
We had 2 different people take turns at being the captain, and there were when the sails are full, they can't actually see ahead, so you needed a navigator keeping an eye on the map and on obstructions. And the other people were running around keeping the sails trim and all of that. So that's the 4-man galleon. I haven't played the single player, but it definitely works better with someone calling the shots.
I get the impression, without having actually played this game, but just what I know of it, that it would be quite similar teamwork in comparison to Star Trek Bridge Crew or something like that, where everybody has a different role on a station.
Kind of. We tried to allocate roles, but people just sort of naturally ended up in spots they wanted to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's barrels underneath, and in them you've got gunpowder, you've got bananas for health, you've got planks to make repairs, and cannonballs. So you got to go find the stuff you need in order to do what you want to do. It's kind of funny when you drop the anchor when it's full sail ahead, though.
Yeah.
The
Sounds
most
horrible.
direct comparison that I draw is Guns of Icarus. Did you guys ever play Guns of Icarus?
No.
No.
It's like a airship game where you have a crew of 4 people on a blimp airship festooned with guns.
Okay.
And it's sort of very, very similar to this, but much more bare bones.
I was thinking a bit of Overcooked as well.
Good fun.
Kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit more frantic and manic. But no, I can't wait. As soon as, I actually manage to download this thing and my internet connection doesn't go to shit, that would be good. Yeah. But, all right, we'll see if these opening impressions aside, because I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that game in greater detail once we've dived in and played a bit more. Other gaming. I might jump in first this week if that's all right, guys, because I've got a couple of ticks in the box of finished games that I'd like to tell the tale about. So, because this week, of course, is the opening week of the new Tomb Raider movie in cinemas. I had sort of previously, as I've mentioned on the show, been trying to finish off Rise of the Tomb Raider, so the second of the rebooted Tomb Raider games, trying to get that done in time for the movie, and also, of course, because I knew the announcement of the third title in the series was imminent, and as it turns out it was. More on that shortly. So, but yes, I did. I rolled credits on Rise of the Tomb Raider this week, and was generally pretty damn impressed with that game. It was very, very cool. Compared to the first one, I think the biggest difference I can draw between the two is that the first one, I think, is a lot more of a solitary game narrative-wise, because you spend a lot more time sort of out in the wilderness and kind of like a lot of the encounters that you face, particularly like the quick time events and that kind of stuff, is very much the environment, triggering those things. Whereas in Rise of the Tomb Raider, there's actually human forces and other things at play that you interact with a lot more during the game. And I think that gives a good vehicle for actually showing more of Lara's personality, because you get to see more of her motivations and her drive and that kind of thing when she interacts with other human beings. Like it's a bit more of a vehicle for that kind of storytelling, which I think is good. So yeah, and because it is her origin story, I think it's important not to see her sort of out in the wilderness just trying to survive and not really interacting with stuff. I think that dialogue is important to be able to tell that kind of story and develop her as a character, which is good. And it had a lot more to do with the shadowy organization that I'm pretty sure is going to play a huge role in the next title by the name of Trinity, which I actually can't remember. Maybe you guys can recall. Was Trinity ever a major player in the original Tomb Raider games? I seem to remember it being something. Yeah.
You're asking me to remember something?
Yeah.
I have a feeling it was, but I can't really remember either. But I remember there being like a James Bond villain shadow organization, basically. I can't remember if it was called Trinity. It's basically
the Tomb Raider equivalent of Spectre. It's very much like that.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah. I don't know, maybe it was the Angelina Jolie movies that it popped up as well, because I know I've heard it before in something Tomb Raider related. I just can't recall what exactly, but yeah. I don't know. Gameplay-wise, it was great. I think the mechanics with the crafting and all the language stuff and some of the hidden tombs and things were greatly improved this time around from the first outing, so big thumbs up from me. It was a fun ride, and I think the game was slightly shorter than the last one, but they kind of packed a bit more in, I felt. So that was a good experience all up. And the other one that I just finished last night, in fact, because I'm trying to square a few things away before diving into a pirate ship in the next couple of days, I managed to finish off Shadow of the Colossus, so the PS4 remake. And I have some thoughts on that game. I definitely have some thoughts.
This is your first time playing it, right?
It is my first time playing it. Absolutely. Yep. I never played the original. And let me preface this by saying overall I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great game. It's got some definite fucking issues though. And I don't think that they're issues just related to the port. So
okay, go on. Tread carefully, but go on.
So the biggest highlights of the game are pretty obvious. It's the Colossi fights. They're hands down the mechanics involved in those boss battles and the puzzle-like element of trying to work out how to complete those encounters, far and above the best part of the game. It was awesome. The parts that lead up to those encounters, though, I felt generally were quite lacking. So I think that the world does a really good job of sort of conveying this feeling of tranquility and emptiness, which is great, and I get what they're going for an artistic sort of angle there. But the problem with that is that I think that you spend a bit too much time sort of out in that environment, just going from the central location where you kind of start from each time you go to a new Colossus, and trying to find where that Colossus is on the map. So the time that you spend actually going from point A to point B and then point A to point C and point A to point D and so on and so forth was not enjoyable at all. Like, you get to see a bit of scenery, fine, that's cool. Riding around the horse, you get to sort of, admire the spectacle beautiful of the game engine, sort of rendering these beautiful sort of vistas in the distance. And that's really cool, but it's just traveling. Like, there's not really anything involved in that journey apart from consulting your map, making sure you're going the right way, using your sword to sort of guide yourself in the right direction as far as where you hold your sword aloft basically, and it sort of gives you like a laser pointer that you can focus to work out which direction the next Colossus is in. But that was probably another one of the issues I had too. Like that I found to not be terribly reliable. It was actually glowing gold, which is what happens when you're next to a Colossus, in a lot of places for me on the map that were not next to the Colossus. So I don't know if that's a bug or if that's intended, but it was extremely off-putting because it made navigation a fucking nightmare. So
okay,
yeah,
I haven't encountered that issue before. I've played through the game twice before, and I hadn't had that particular issue. But I think you're right though that the sort of emptiness is largely an artistic choice. Which I guess just works for some people more than others. I quite like it, but I think also if there was less traveling and you were reaching each Colossus sooner, the game might feel like it's over too quickly, or like if you move from one Colossus to the next without that downtime, I feel like you kind of need that downtime to spread things out a bit.
I agree to an extent, but I think maybe what they could have done is use the environment a little bit more to force you to think about how you were navigating as opposed to just traveling. So, for example, like when you actually reach the site of some of the Colossi and you have to like do some climbing, like up a temple ruin or something to get to the final destination, sort of where it roughly is, it's usually only the very last part of the journey that you're required to do any of that kind of platforming type stuff. I think if they had that a bit more split up throughout the map so that it's not just ride, a little bit of climbing, then fight, that would have been better, like to break it up a bit more, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Maybe if they had like roadblocks that you have to navigate through and then maybe open up a shortcut so that you can get through it quicker a second time.
Exactly,
something like that.
Yeah, that would have been great. I think that would have worked really, really well. So there's some weird things about the game that as well, it's very much not intuitive as far as some of the mechanics go either. Like I discovered completely by accident the whole lizard tail thing. The shrines that you find dotted throughout the map, which you can use to basically replenish your health, that's explained to you. There's a bit of sort of dialogue from the entity that's communicating with you that kind of sets up the whole shrines thing and how that works. But there's also ways to increase your stamina bar for climbing throughout the map. When you get to those shrines, there's these little lizards that you can find. And if you manage to catch them and pull their tails off, they actually increase your stamina bar. Now, I partly found that out by accident, but I did a bit of reading just to sort of confirm what I thought was the case. And I was kind of correct about what I thought they did. But there was absolutely no mechanic in the game whatsoever to explain that process. And it was, if I hadn't have actually seen something that made me look it up, I would have gone the entire game without realizing there was a way to do that. And I think that the difference in terms of difficulty, if you are able to increase the size of your stamina bar to not, when you get to some of the later encounters, is huge. So, I think that could have been done
I played through nearly my entire first run without knowing that. Back in the day, because I had no way of knowing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I mean, it's just a minor thing. Again, it's just a bit about communication. Like the other stuff that I think is a bit janky about the game, you can kind of forgive to a certain extent, like the camera angles and the way that sort of pans around and goes into weird spots. You know, it's a bit annoying. You can kind of get used to it. Controlling Aggro, the horse, is a bit difficult at times, but I don't mind that so much because I think it mirrors how controlling a horse would actually be. Like, it's not supposed to be super, super easy like other games would have you believe. I've ridden a horse in real life. It's not fucking easy. So that kind of makes sense. But you do get better at it over time as well. But
some of it would also be like a product of the time. Like, I haven't played the remake, but if it feels and plays the same as the original, which was a PlayStation 2 game, not even a PlayStation 3 game. So it was at a time when like the third person genre was still in its infancy. Like, you'd really only had mascot platformers before that, and then some pretty crappy PlayStation 1 platformers, but so it's pretty early on in the development of that genre of the two, really.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, for its time, I can definitely understand, the impact it would have made back then, and I think that I think it is a great game. Like, no issues overall. I think that there's just a few things that maybe now seem obvious that they could have done better, but for its time, I completely understand that it would have been revolutionary. Some of the collectibles are weird too. Like in the menu, you actually get a list of a whole bunch of different items that you can collect in the game, and it's not until you finish it that you realise that almost all of them are unlocked by doing time trials against the monsters that you can only do in the New Game Plus mode, which that again just struck me as a bit odd. Like, why make it even visible during the main game if you can't get them until you finish it? That just seemed weird, but yeah. But I have to ask you, Christian, like without giving anything too spoilery away to anyone who's likely to do these fights, what was your favourite Colossi battle out of the lot? Can you actually remember?
My favourite Colossi battle is the bigger flying one with the desert underneath it. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
My exact one as well. That was my favourite too. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that we agree on that one. That was fantastic. So one of the fights that actually using the horse is very, very important. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, that was Shadow of the Colossus. So can still absolutely recommend, a few quibbles aside. So now Jam and I got to do something fun this week. So Jam, we talked about it briefly last week. We kind of went back in time to a game that we discussed in, I don't think it was our very first episode, but maybe our second episode of the show ever.
Really?
Yeah, it was that far back. Oh, hang on. Was it the second episode? I'm going to look this up later. I know it was the first few months.
You look it up. I will talk. We dove back into The Division shortly after hearing about the announcement of The Division 2. We had a bunch of friends who'd recently started playing again tell us about how much better it was now than it was on release. And started talking about all of the new content. And Luke and I realised we had season passes. So we reinstalled and jumped back in, and it's just as pretty as I remember it.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Our friends were correct.
Yeah, it's this destroyed city, but it's pretty in its, destruction.
Yeah.
The detail is amazing, the environments and the atmosphere in the game. But yeah, we checked out. Well, the first thing I checked out were the 2 new areas at the pier to remind myself what the buttons were. I actually learned the keyboard keys for the first time because I think I played on controller when it came out. So I had no idea what I was doing, but it's pretty intuitive. The trickiest thing for me was getting my head around the gear again. There are so many different types of currencies and keys and tokens. I don't even know what. You have all these little pouches holding different things for different areas of the game. But once I got my head around the gear and all the attachments on my gear and equipped to optimize, I found that I was, doing all right. I had my marksman rifle and my Vector and my little pew-pew pistol. And running around in that world felt good again, remembering, how to take advantage of cover and use all of the items. It's still a cool game, and we've only sort of dipped our toes into the new content that's come out since
dense.
We stopped playing.
It is super dense.
There's so much. There's so much that I couldn't even talk to it. I didn't go near the Dark Zone, but we had a quick look at Underground, was it?
Yeah.
We just did one phase of an Underground mission, and that was cool. And to unlock that, we had to do some other missions, out in the world. What else did we do? I can't even remember. We did some of the old raids to practice.
Yeah, high-value targets. We went hunting for a couple of those.
Yes.
Kind of like boss fight missions that you can set up on the map, which were good.
And was it the resistance stuff? The waves of...
Yeah.
We had points in time where we'd get to a part of a map and we started having waves of enemies come at us, 3 distinct waves. And they got quite tough. I'd forgotten all about the boss, the elite enemies, until I encountered one and promptly died because I was busy mowing through the ordinary red guys, just the noobs.
Yeah.
I'm going, oh yeah, I can do this. I remember this game. This is cool. And then got to a tough battle and went, bleh.
Yeah. One thing I was a little worried about going in, sort of with the DLC content, like the new areas, especially the underground and the survival content, is I didn't want it to be a situation where you'd gone through the city and you'd played all of the main missions in the different sort of districts, and then you don't ever go back into those areas unless you go to the Dark Zone because all of the higher level content is in the underground and that kind of thing. But was very pleasantly surprised by the fact that they've kind of done in part what World of Warcraft has done, and tiered the different levels of content within the main map, so you can actually level it up as you go up through different brackets of sort of average gear score. So the content basically levels with you in a sense, which is good.
Very good move. Yeah, it keeps it challenging and interesting. You don't just feel like you're mowing through the streets.
Yeah, and makes the rewards
going wherever you please with no challenge.
Yeah.
That'd be boring. And it helps you gear up because, when you're encountering the higher level enemies around any given corner, there's a greater chance of them dropping higher value loot, which means you get better.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Definitely a game that benefits from the multiplayer, though. I think playing solo is fun, but playing with someone else is super better. So, when you've got an ally to watch your back.
Die quite so often.
Oh, yeah. So many of the skills and abilities are complementary to each other as well. So I think they definitely work well like that. I mean, you can definitely sort of pull players into different encounters in like a matchmaking style thing that's built into the game, which is quite good. But when you actually have someone you can communicate with properly, that makes all the difference, I find. So yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to get back into the Dark Zone because I remember they'd started tidying it up when we stopped playing. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to see how it compares.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'll definitely be playing some more Division for sure. So now I super want to hear about Christian's other gaming experience this week because this is something that I freaking love and I want to get your thoughts. So tell us all about it.
So during the week, I finally got my hands on Yakuza 0.
Yes.
After trying for a couple of weeks, found it in the store and picked it up. And I am about maybe 6-7 hours in, and I love it. It's awesome. Mm-hmm. I was just immediately grabbed by the look and feel of the game, the 1980s Tokyo feel, and the character designs, and just the overall aesthetic of the game speaks to me very, very well. Yeah. And the gameplay is fun too. The combat is kind of bit basic, but it feels good and it's over rather quickly. The individual encounters only take 20-30 seconds and then you're back into the open world. So it's got a nice feel to it. And then the number of side activities is just awesome. I've already spent so much time at the karaoke just watching the different video clips. I love the karaoke. It's so good. And the playing shogi, the Japanese chess, that's fun. And there's so many activities. Darts, I was playing darts and pool, and you could spend hours and hours and hours just playing the side activities, and they're all fun. Some of them could be sold as separate games.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And one that I can recommend, Christian, if you haven't tried it already, make sure you do the pocket car racing. That's really good.
I've picked up some parts for the pocket cars, but I haven't actually been to the spot yet.
It's huge. It's a really big part of that side activity stuff. So don't miss out on that one. Yeah.
No, I think I'm going to take this game slow and I'm going to thoroughly enjoy all of the different side activities and everything. Yeah. And the main story is fun too. The quality of the cutscenes and the voice acting, it's all top notch and very compelling. And it has that really nice back and forth between the goofiness and the seriousness of the gangster Yakuza story. It doesn't cross the lines at inappropriate times. There's not dark, somber times where it does goofy Japanese things. That's put aside for the side missions and the side activities. So I think it does that well.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many chapters through are you? You sort of well into the Majima story now, or are you still mucking out with Kiryu?
I'm into the Majima story. I think I'm in chapter 4.
I think it's probably the first bit of the story. Yeah.
Yeah, the first I think it's the second chapter with Majima, but still running around with him, yeah. I'm curious how long it takes to go back to Kiryu and when or if they end up meeting in this game. I'm sure they will, but I look forward to how it all develops.
Yeah, by memory, I think that the opening of the game is a little bit longer with each of them to set them up, and then after that it's kind of... I mean, I'm only going by memory here, but I think it's usually 2 chapters, then 2 chapters, then 2 chapters, then 2 chapters, kind of rotation like that. Yeah. And it gets a bit weird towards the end with the way that it sort of splits up. But you definitely go back and forth quite a bit. So which is good.
No, I'm really into it, and I'm already excited for Kiwami, which I purchased first.
Yep. Yeah.
So get through this, then Kiwami.
Absolutely. And then Kiwami 2.
And then Kiwami 2 launching into the news. So Yakuza Kiwami 2 has been announced to come out in the West this August. So this is the remake of Yakuza 2, which originally came out like over 10 years ago. It was like 2006 Yakuza 2 came out. So it's really smart what Sega's doing with remaking Yakuza 1 as Kiwami to kind of give a soft relaunch for new fans, but at the same time they're still releasing the future games. So Yakuza 6 is coming out very soon too. So there's like two release schedules, one for like new fans of the series and one for old fans of the series, and eventually they'll catch up. But yeah, so I should have definitely completed Yakuza 0 and Kiwami 1 by the time Kiwami 2 comes out in August.
From what I know of Yakuza 6, so the Song of Life, it does apparently do a really good job of giving you a huge amount of exposition at the beginning to bridge the gap of the other games in the series before you get into 6. So I think even if you had just played 0 and you went straight into 6 after that, you probably would understand what was going on with the way that they set it up. But I do happen to know one of the major characters in 6 sort of is introduced in Kiwami 1, and for that reason I think you probably want to try and play Kiwami if you can before you get onto 6. Yeah. But for anyone wondering, Kiwami is basically the Japanese term for extreme, so it's Yakuza Extreme. Essentially. So, another interesting note is the new Yakuza 6 has been built in their new engine called the Dragon Engine, and Kiwami 1 has been built using the same engine as Yakuza 0, but Kiwami 2 is also going to use the Dragon Engine for the remake. So
I had seen that the screenshots they've shown for Kiwami 2, they look a lot nicer than Yakuza 0. So I was wondering if it was just more like time and polish or whether it was a different engine, but there you go.
Yeah, it's not, with those games too, it's not like just a straight port. They definitely make changes because like Majima didn't play anywhere near as major role in the original Yakuza as he did in Yakuza Kiwami. Like they actually introduced a whole new mechanic for him where he can just pop up anywhere and fight you, which didn't exist in the game before that. And there's a few other things too. So they have sort of expanded on the games somewhat when given the opportunity rather than just doing a straight port, which I think is really good because it's sort of retooled the way that everything works effectively. So yeah, but man, love this series. I'm so excited.
I'm in now. I'm in for the long haul.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said to you on chat during the week, when you run into Mr. Libido, let me know.
I think I might have seen him, but he wasn't introduced. But there's a moment where you can kind of look around a room, and you can is that the guy? You can sort of
no. You'll know him. You'll know him when you see him. You actually do get introduced to him in terms of dialogue, and there's a version of him in both of the cities. The actual Mr. Libido version, I think, is in Majima's area, whatever that place is called. But Kamurocho? No, Kamurocho is the main area. Anyway, I forget.
Yeah.
You will know.
I have a sneaking suspicion I might have seen him already, maybe early, but I'll let you know.
So
I'm sure I'll know eventually.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So, Jam, Sea of Thieves, we had a little tidbit for today, and given that you've actually played it, I'm assuming that you might have this thing. So, what launched today with Sea of Thieves?
I did. Well, I was on Reddit this morning reading up about it all, getting excited, getting hyped. And I read about a suggestion that a Redditor made to Rare, the devs, saying, please put in a day one patch, which is an eye patch with a number 1 on it for everyone who jumps on day 1 and can get it, which is hilarious. And they did it, which is fantastic. Awesome. I have purchased mine, and they've actually credited him too. So the Redditor was Jeffabel, yep. And their message under the day 1 patch says, a message in a bottle from Jolly Jeffabel washed ashore. Eye patch makers read it and said aye.
That's amazing. I love that. Cool. Day 1 eye patch.
It is so cool. It's hilarious.
I think it really sets the tone for what this game is all about. It's a really good one. Yeah.
It's jolly and silly, and it's just such a wonderful example of how they listen and pay attention to the fans. Because, I mean, you work in these little bits of fan service and you got fans for life, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was neat, and I've definitely already picked mine up. It took a second. I had a bit of a money issue. The servers were so full, I wasn't getting my cut of the loot, but it eventually caught up, and I went straight to the store to go buy it. It's like 1 gold coin. Nice touch.
Yeah, that's great. All right, well, tying into other stuff from our weekly gaming as well, Shadow of the Tomb Raider We kind of knew this was coming because there had been a leak about a year-ish ago from someone accidentally showing some documents on a train or a subway somewhere. I think someone managed to see something that they perhaps shouldn't have from either Square Enix or Crystal Dynamics. I can't remember which. But it has been confirmed. There is a website now which actually has a teaser trailer on it as a promo. The teaser itself is basically announcing that there's going to be a full announcement on the 27th of April. But it does confirm the name. It is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It does confirm that it's the third game in the rebooted sort of story arc for Lara Croft. So you can think of this as like the origin trilogy, essentially. And given that the last one was released in 2015 and the one prior to that, I think, again, was about 3 years. So it's been roughly the same gap between each one. But this one looks like it's going to have a bit more of a heavy jungle theme. So Lara's sort of traveling around what looks like Mayan temples in the teaser. So we're going to see a whole bunch more on the 27th of April. But we do know, because the date has been sort of released, that the main game itself will come out on the 14th of September. So it's heading this year, which is good. So you can look forward to that later in the year. More Tomb Raider is always a good thing. Those games are good. You should play them. Yeah. All right.
I wanted to speak briefly about something that happened in the wider gaming world. And that was, some listeners may have caught the Twitch streamer Ninja streamed with the rapper Drake on Twitch. He streamed Fortnite and it busted open all of the records. Ninja and Drake managed to have 635,000 concurrent viewers, which the previous record was
huge.
Yeah, previous record for a solo streamer was Dr. Disrespect, which was 388,000. So
wow,
that's
quite a
388
jump.
to 635, huge jump. And that's only beaten by event streams that have had over 1 million. So that's the record for a single person streamer. I think it's really cool. I'm really interested in it because of how it's brought Twitch and streaming to a wider audience, because there would be tons of Drake fans that have no idea what this whole thing really is, and they might have checked it out because of his presence. And it has raised the profile a little bit, I feel, of streaming. And I saw an interview with the streamer Ninja on NBC, where they were just talking to him on a news segment about what happened and who he is, and it was really interesting. And he seems like a really switched on young guy. So yeah.
I caught that too. My immediate thought was
cool.
After some of the controversies we've seen with YouTube sort of micro celebrities as of late, idiot Logan Paul and some of the shit that's gone down with PewDiePie over the last year and that kind of thing.
Yeah, JonTron.
Yeah, all that stuff. I think that this guy is a breath of fresh air when it comes to that kind of culture, because you're right. He really does seem switched on. He seems like a really level-headed guy. And some of the stuff he said during the interview that really stood out, I think, was him giving advice to other kids that were interested in getting into streaming, as that he did this in addition to all of his studies and actually pursuing work and a regular life outside of it. All of that came first, and the streaming stuff came second. So, you know, talking about how he likes to give a bunch of his income to various charities and some of the ones in particular that he was passionate about and why. And yeah, I think it was, if this is the new face of Twitch, it is a very, very good change. So more of this.
It's really glad that this guy has popped out at the top into the mainstream a little bit. And speaking of him giving cash to charities, he'll have plenty of cash to do that. I think that latest estimate I saw is that after this stream, he's probably earning about $700,000 US a month.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Holy
He's got,
shit.
I think he's got 90,000. He gained 90,000 subscribers over the last month, which is insane. So he's just raking it in, but good on him.
Yep. And in related news, Party Loaded's Twitch stream coming soon to a Twitch near you. More on that in the coming weeks.
Yeah, because we're super fun to watch. Now, in real news, though, a couple of other little items, mostly related to mobile game ports. We spoke about Fortnite last week. Last week?
Yeah.
Fortnite's got their game port going on, and they've introduced currently a limited time event, a Blitz mode, which starts everyone up a bit closer together. The safe zone's already on map when you launch, to keep things, I guess, intense. and fun for those who don't want to sort of run around in the emptiness for 20 minutes first. And it sounds like it's been quite popular. I haven't tried it myself. I don't know how, Luke, have you jumped back on?
No, well, I haven't jumped onto Fortnite this week because I've been trying to finish off the other games, but I have been paying great close attention to how the mobile launch has been going, because I think it's just a lot of people are getting the test codes at the moment. It hasn't sort of launched in all countries yet. But general feedback has been like insanely good. Like they're saying that this thing runs like a dream for a mobile port, which for the nature of the game is shocking to me. I think that that's amazing.
I know. Well, this will speak to its success then. Another game has announced a big mobile port, and that's Ark Survival Evolved.
Yep.
They want the full game playable on mobile. You're going to be able to do all of the things with the dinosaurs
Which is just crazy.
that you do. I haven't played it myself. It's one I've meant to try for a while. But yeah, a full experience on mobile, which sounds intense.
I think
it's
it's
crazy.
free to play as well, from what I was reading.
Yeah.
And the developer that's actually working on the port is the same company that did a lot of the ports of the GTA games.
Yeah.
Because a whole bunch of them are playable on mobile now as well, which also blows my mind because, holy shit, that's another dense game that just doesn't seem like it belongs on mobile, but okay. Yeah.
Been a long way
so
since
taming
playing
dinosaurs.
Snake on the Nokias, haven't we?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Look, even,
This is becoming a thing.
even PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds had its mobile sort of game launch, I think it was today in the US. And like the feedback that's been going out for that, again, has just been absolutely awesome. Like people are loving it. They reckon it's like the best thing since sliced bread when it comes to like a recreation of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds on a mobile device, and everyone's just speaking the world of it. So I don't know. I know that mobile gaming is a thing, and I know that we can do some pretty complicated games on mobiles, but condensing these survival-style battle royale games down into a mobile device, that still does my head in. How can it actually work this well?
I don't know.
I've got no
I
idea.
have to try it.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we shall. But in the meantime, we have a different angle to take for the rest of this episode. So moving on from the news swiftly into this week's main topic. Now, this is one that I guess we could kind of consider adjacent to a lot of the stuff we've talked about tonight, and almost some of the stuff that we spoke about last week when it came to our Designer gaming franchise reboot. Something that has been running through our minds lately, and part of the reason why Jam and I picked up The Division again this week was exploring the concept of gaming titles that have had like a great comeback. So they've effectively failed at launch, and for some reason, even after that initial failure, when it didn't look like they were going to find an audience, didn't look like they were going to find a player base for whatever reason, later on down the track, for some reason, they've actually gone on to great success. Like something has switched, and then people have flooded to the game, and it's been a complete juxtaposition from its launch experience. And we have quite a few examples of that we wanted to talk through tonight, and sort of explore the reasons behind why these things might have occurred. So shall we kick off with the elephant in the room that we talked about earlier? So, Jam, what are your thoughts on The Division's sort of come back into vogue as of late?
Well, firstly, I'd say I think failed at launch is a bit strong as a definition of a comeback, but it's definitely, about those games who hit Struggle Town for various reasons. Division at launch, it was interesting because it was a fun game. I remember thoroughly enjoying the single player, but there were a lot of people who weren't a fan of the bullet sponge mechanic, fighting foes. So many people, when they get into a first or third person shooter, they want a slightly more realistic experience, and they don't want to have to, unload 3 magazines worth.
That's one of the big criticisms I heard was the bullet sponge thing, and that put me off trying it, to be honest.
That's still a part of the game, but what's improved with the game, I guess we sort of fell off playing it because of the lack of really, I guess, fair and entertaining endgame content.
Yeah, that was the biggest issue at launch.
The Dark Zone was very poorly managed to begin with. It was so easy to get griefed in there without any sort of viable way of countering it. So those who couldn't put up with that would just avoid the Dark Zone, which meant they were dumped back into the rest of the world, which, if you'd hit max content, it's pretty straightforward, not too difficult, or you'd just be redoing the limited number of raids over and over. Is that how you remember it, Luke? My memory's not
Yeah, no,
tops,
I think you're pretty much on
clearly.
the money. Like, I think a lot of what we saw with The Division, it reminds me of a lot of what's going on with Destiny 2 at the moment, actually. So the game itself on launch did pretty well, but as soon as the player base sort of moved on to that end game content and you're really then looking at it as a game as a service as opposed to just a sort of standalone title, because you need the company switched on with ways to retain that player base and not have them bleed off into other games, like give them compelling reasons to continue playing.
You want the experience to change and evolve.
Yeah.
You don't want to be stuck redoing the same 6, end game missions or raids.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's when people start losing interest, especially once they've conquered them and they find it fairly straightforward and routine to get through them, because they now have the gear and the know-how to game the system, or they know all of the cool little ways to take advantage of interesting glitches or whatnot. You get people distracted by the next new thing, another game that pops up.
Kind of similar to what's happened with
capture their interest.
Kind of similar to what's happened with Bungie lately as well. Like I feel the Division and Ubisoft were marred a little bit by some minor controversies that collectively painted a much more negative picture than it needed to. Like one of the ones out of the gate was that the footage that they showed at the original E3 when they made the announcement of the game was shown to be completely doctored footage and did not represent how the game was actually going to appear, and that was something that
Bull shots.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't do well. The other thing
and
was
that's not a new thing. I mean, that happens.
Oh yeah.
The ambitious demos like a year or more before release. We've seen it.
Ubisoft
I remember.
Got a bad record for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And a game that really is being sold on its appearance, like The Division is. I think that stands out a bit more as well. But they had a buggy launch of some of their additional content, like the first Incursion that came out, which is like their equivalent of a raid, had big issues with like a wall glitch where people could just bypass a major chunk of the challenge of the mission and complete it.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, that was an issue. They had problems with pushing back the season pass content as well. Like the expansions got delayed, and that left a sour taste for a lot of people. It was just one thing after another that kind of chipped away at it and just left a bit of a negative player base that kind of drifted off to other things. I can't remember if it was prompted at the time by any other major release, kind of similar to what's happened with Monster Hunter and Destiny 2, but I think there probably were a few things.
I'm sure there was.
Yeah,
there
I'm
was
guaranteed.
Something that pulled me away.
Yeah. But yeah, the
Destiny,
DLC that's come out now.
Same.
Yeah, exactly. And Destiny is sort of in the same way that the subsequent releases have kind of made the difference as well. So, yeah.
I was going to jump ahead and sort of lump The Division and Destiny kind of together. I feel like they've had very similar trajectories and similar solutions too to the comeback situation. Yeah.
I think that probably the biggest difference between the two is that The Division has kind of found a new life by like a dedicated player base chipping away at it and gradually bringing the interest back into the game over a long period of time. Like since they've gotten the 3 major expansions out as part of that season pass, and they've generally been very, very good. Like some of the stuff they've added to the game, like the survival elements and also the advanced Dark Zone stuff that came out with the Last Stand expansion last year. It's taken a while for people to cotton on, but it's kind of had like a bit of a sort of snowball effect once it's gotten the momentum. But with Destiny, it's a bit different because I think that they had like one big spike where they almost relaunched the game with their big
Taken King
expansion. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a gradual thing at all. It was kind of like they spent a long time after the initial launch and the first sort of smaller expansions, sort of gathering player feedback, getting all their ducks in a row, and then when they were ready to fire, they fired on all cylinders and did like a big push for the game again, which was very successful. So
yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and that's actually quite similar to the next game I want to talk about, which is Final Fantasy XIV. Because that's a game that had a literal relaunch. So that it originally came out in 2010. This is the second Final Fantasy MMO after Final Fantasy XI, and it was just super, super unpopular. The reviews were awful. People were saying that the interface was a mess, the game was buggy, the world map made no sense, the crafting was terrible, combat was terrible. It was just a complete mess of a game. And Square Enix kind of stuck it out until for over a year, until November in 2012, and then they actually pulled the plug on the the game completely. They shut down all the servers, and they said, we're packing Final Fantasy 14 up, and we're going to look and see if we can relaunch it later. And they did in August 2013. So it was almost a year of downtime where the game just didn't exist. And then they relaunched it as Final Fantasy 14, A Realm Reborn. And that game has just been wildly popular and is now like probably second or third most popular MMO that I can think of. Obviously, World of Warcraft being the biggest. And then I kind of feel like Guild Wars and Final Fantasy 14 are kind of in the same realm. And it's just a massive improvement in every single way. And it's received really good post-launch support, big expansions. Heaven's Sword was a really popular expansion that came out. So yeah, even more so than Destiny, that was a literal relaunch, but still Final Fantasy 14. But they actually, shut down the game, which is kind of unique. I can't really think of any other games that have gone that far to make a comeback.
Yeah, it's a massive commitment.
Yeah. I mean, good on Square for taking the gamble, because that is huge. Like, you have no idea whether that investment's going to pay off or not, and that would be a huge PR hit to them if handled incorrectly. But, man, paid off. That's really, really good to see. It's one of those success stories that actually makes you feel quite good. Being a video gamer in that industry, it's like you kind of want to see these things succeed when people do the right thing to support the player base.
Yeah. I'm really glad that it didn't just relaunch and then was a good game. It relaunched, was a good game, and people played it. Like so the company, the developers have been rewarded. They've got their revenue stream from the game. So yeah, good on them.
Yeah, treat people well, and hopefully you'll get the dividends. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of which, the other one that sprung to mind instantly when we were talking about great gaming comeback stories, which is a good sort of link to this same thing as well, is Diablo 3. So,
Yes.
One of the few kind of black marks on Blizzard's book, really. They haven't had a huge number of big public failures, but Diablo 3 was probably one of the biggest ones that we can remember in recent times. Diablo franchise, wildly popular, looter franchise. There's a huge amount of love out there for Diablo 1 and 2 in particular, like is a lot of people's sort of favourite game in that kind of genre. So Diablo 3 had a huge sort of level of expectations to live up to. And I think while it was a good game, there was a couple of big things that... was working against it right out of the gate, and
Era 37 being one of them.
That was a big
fact that, on the day the game launched, no one could play it.
Now, I was part of the Diablo 3 launch crowd, like suffering through.
Yeah, I took
the
day off work.
Yeah, me. I think I did too. Actually, I don't know if I was supposed to, but I did. So. Yeah, and that was really bad. It was not...
That was a really bad, first impression.
Yeah, no, not good at all. And I think part of the angst that a lot of people felt was that they kind of looked at Blizzard, with their success managing huge numbers of players simultaneously online with the World of Warcraft servers. And this happening, it's kind of like, you know how to do this as a company. Why is this not working for Diablo 3? You can do this for WoW. What's the problem? So...
Yep.
It was a bad look, and the other thing that really marred it was the whole structure around what they had in the game initially, which was the real money auction house. So an initial feature of the game, and it was pretty clear that the driving motivator behind this was for Blizzard to be able to monetize Diablo in some way, similar to what they had been doing with some of their other games. They wanted to have like a real money tie-in so that people would have a way to continue to purchase content after the initial purchase of the game. So the auction house in Diablo typically works normally where you will get items through playing the game, sort of your random drops like different high-powered weapons and legendary and exotics and all that kind of stuff. And you could put them up on the auction house similar to what you do in World of Warcraft. So you basically ask an asking price for the item and you put it up and hopefully someone buys it and you get the game into your in-game sort of a character's account. But what they decided to do is to make that compatible with real-world currency as well. And unfortunately, what that meant is that the game instantly turned into a pay-to-win scenario, because the more money you pumped into getting some of those rare chase items at the auction house, obviously the better you're going to do. And it wasn't a strictly competitive game in that way. Like, it's not like you're getting on and doing PvP versus other Diablo players, but there were leaderboards, and that was something that a lot of people took pretty seriously. So it did have a big impact. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just screwed up the loot system in the game because Blizzard had clearly designed it so that certain items, the drop rate, this legendary item or whatever they call it in Diablo these days, wouldn't drop as much as it might in a single player game because didn't want to flood the real money auction house. If everyone could get their hands on this same weapon at 1 cent a pop, then Blizzard wouldn't get any money from their share. So the actual user experience going through it single player was impacted by the real money auction house, which sucked.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, big move for them. They basically a little way down the road decided to shut off the real money auction house altogether. I can't remember how long it took them to do it. I think it was probably within about 3 to 4 months. It wasn't too long. So they removed that.
A little bit longer than that.
Yeah, might have been. They removed it as a feature of the game totally, and planned a couple of major patches to address the loot drop sort of situation and re-tinker with that. But Diablo 3 probably had its real resurgence a little while after that was when it actually had the console ports. So they worked on a couple of ports for the current generation consoles for Xbox 360 and PS3, which, as it turned out, did really, really well because playing Diablo on a console is super fucking fun. The control scheme's great. So, and that gave a huge resurgence of interest in the game and, with the other stuff that they'd fixed in the meantime. And not too long after that, they started a new Diablo sort of seasonal content format where every season they kind of gave you like a reset for all the characters that you've been playing. So you can start a new character, participate in just that season, and you had like drops and items available for you just during that play period, which would kind of bind to your account, but not to your characters because you would sort of refresh them every new season and run through, which people seem to love. Like, and that model's done pretty well for them since then. I think they're up to season 17 or something. So
something huge. I didn't return to Diablo after the first couple of months, but I have a couple of people in my family, particularly my brother, who when they reworked that endgame content and introduced those new things, he got back into it in a big way for quite a while. It definitely drew him back and made it far more enjoyable. He'd lost interest pretty quickly after, completing, with air quotes, the game. So that was a wonderful move on top of all of the rest. It really refreshed people's interest.
I must admit, I had my doubts about the season sort of format when they first launched it, but I was wrong. They have done very, very well with that. And I think that it makes a lot of sense that you have these sort of hard dates where, things get refreshed and there's new sort of goals to strive for, as opposed to just letting it be its own sort of constantly bubbling ecosystem. Actually giving it a bit more structure, I think, does a really, really good job of giving people a reason to come back at each of those season start points. Like, even if they drop off for the weeks after that, at least they're still coming back for the beginning of it every single time for some of those things, which is good. And it's something that I think is actually a very, very good part of the next game that we're going to talk about. The seasonal format will probably do wonders for them in the future. So it shouldn't be any surprise, because we talked about it a bit recently, a game that failed at launch, which has actually gone on to currently be pretty much the biggest game in the world right now, is Fortnite.
Oh, yeah. So I haven't played Fortnite, so you guys take it away.
Well, originally marketed and released as a zombie survival game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, which had some success, but a lot of feedback from players complaining about, the optimization and the balance and how it wasn't fully supported and whatnot. And since then has released the Battle Royale mode, which now is going bonkers. So, yeah, I haven't even played the base game. I've only played the free Battle Royale port. But it's such a different way of playing the game. It's not what they envisioned to start with at all. It felt like they were just trying to jump on the hype and tack this thing on. But it's picked up steam. It's surpassing PUBG as the popular game. Yeah, it's odd.
Yeah, so it's kind of unique amongst our examples here, isn't it? That they didn't sort of fix their original vision for Fortnite. They launched a whole new sub game that took over Fortnite.
I think
which has an option of monetization, which is, how I guess clawing back revenue, because I've not paid a cent for it yet.
No, that's it. A lot of people have, though.
Interesting.
I think it's a combination of a perfect storm scenario because they've definitely benefited from the rise of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds and sort of ridden the slipstream that game has left in its wake and capitalised on that a great deal. Even to the extent that I think a couple of the things that that PUBG Corp and Brendan Green and one of the other sort of senior execs within that team have kind of shot themselves in the foot by committing marketing sin 101. Never mention the competition. They've outright complained about Fortnite basically ripping them off, which is they've ripped off the concept to begin with. So I don't think people took to that quite well. And the only thing that they achieved by doing that was pointing attention to their closest competitor, which was, releasing a product that was very similar to theirs and free to play. So they did their advertising for them. It was crazy that they stirred up that controversy. I was just watching it all unfold, just thinking to myself, you got to dig up, stupid. That's just, what are you doing? But yeah, I think that Epic Games have just done every right move from the get-go as well. Like they've really spent a lot of their advertising budget engaging the online community, like a lot of content creators and streamers. They've pumped money into Twitch. They've got a lot of people on board sort of running streams of their games and creating content. And, you see it's just saturated the online sort of, gaming sphere. There's ads running on Twitch all the time for Fortnite. It just, and now that it's hit mainstream this week with all the Drake stream stuff with Ninja.
Yep.
I heard that they actually turned around and they've organised like a major celebrity streaming event that's actually one that they're setting up themselves, and they're going to get some
that's awesome,
well-known individuals in.
I'm really excited for that.
Yeah,
because I know that there have been some game companies that have tried similar things in the past, but it's always been super cringy because the celebrities have never seemed like they really care about the game. Like I remember watching Snoop Dogg play Call of Duty, and it was just kind of like tacky. But this with Fortnite, it seems completely legit. Like I'm really excited to see it.
There's been some random things that have popped up as well. Like, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a reboot happening at the moment for the TV sitcom Roseanne. And
what?
Yeah, I know. It's just it's super weird.
Is Roseanne Barr in it?
Roseanne Barr has actually posted on her Twitter account that she's scored 20 Fortnite victory royales. So she's playing the game regularly, and just random things like this have been popping up and getting mentioned.
Awesome. And
like Roseanne playing Fortnite, what the fuck? What kind of world are we living in? This is the
best timeline.
Yeah, exactly. Both the darkest and the best. So it's stuff like that. Just launches a game like this into the stratosphere as far as public attention goes. So everything's working in their favor at the moment. They're doing all the right things. Their seasonal format structure again. We talked about this in the last couple of weeks. I think that again, by running the game in seasons and having the setup with the cosmetics and ways to spend your real world currency versus your in-game currency, they've done all that really, really well. It doesn't feel sort of shady or penny pinching at all. It's actually quite good. Just super, super excited to see what they do. Again, it's a game company doing the right thing, and I'm eager to see them succeed because they're doing good stuff. So yeah, which is super cool.
We were going to talk about Rainbow Siege as well, Rainbow Six Siege, the other Ubisoft title that's had a bit of a comeback.
Yeah.
That was another game that was marred by some like bullshot controversy too. Like the initial launch trailer made the sort of destructibility in the game seem a bit more intense than it actually was. But I haven't actually played the game myself. Have either of you played Rainbow Six Siege? Or know more about this?
It's interesting because I was talking to my brother yesterday about Fortnite and PUBG and the differences between them, and why I personally prefer PUBG for the realism and the precision and all of that nonsense. And he just looked at me and he said, you need to play Rainbow Six Siege. It is like another step above, just like PUBG is to Fortnite. The intensity and just the seriousness with which he plays this game is nuts. It looks cool. I'm sure I'll play it one day when they have another free weekend. I'll have to get it.
Yeah, they've done a bunch of those.
But I don't know a lot about the controversy.
Well,
Luke, you might know more.
It's not so much controversy. It's more that Christian pretty much had it. Like sales were initially strong for the game. but the player base just disappeared over a very short amount of time. Just a lot of the basic stuff connection issues and bugs and a lot of that stuff just building up over time and plaguing the game quite a bit. But similar to what Ubisoft did with The Division, they've responded to a lot of that stuff. They've made adjustments, they've fixed balance, they've done a lot of those changes sort of during the first year, and now it's a really sort of well-balanced shooter, and it's beginning to get noticed again as such. So they've had a steady stream of content that they've been pumping out as well. So they haven't let up with the free maps. There's been paid DLC as well, so if you do want to spend money on it, you can. And so people who have actually stuck with the game have really felt rewarded, because they've been rewarded with fresh content on a regular basis. It's actually quite a competitive game too, and because it's been seen as such and actually featured in a lot of sort of wider competitive events, it's gained a bit more attention in that sort of area as well. It effectively now a game that was written off initially is now, when you look at all of the big first-person shooter games, it's in that conversation for sure. It's definitely in vogue again at the moment. So it's just done exceedingly well from the developer turning around and just continuing to, give it attention rather than writing it off at the first sign of trouble, which, unfortunately some companies do. So
yeah, and it's a game that thrives on good balance. If they hadn't got that right, I've no doubt it would have just tanked.
Yeah.
You just need incredible skill and good planning to do well at that game, which is why I've been a little wary of trying it. But I must one day. We should all try it and see how ridiculous we are.
Yeah. We'll do awfully, but
yeah.
So I wanted to talk about some of the factors that have influenced these comebacks, and there's a big one which is very apparent when you point it out, and that's that all of the games we've talked about are multiplayer games, and that these sorts of comebacks seem like a lot rarer and harder to achieve for single player games. And I think there's pretty clear reasons for that. That the multiplayer games are built, their game design incorporates iteration and modification and patching and post-game support, post-launch support that lends itself to being able to make a comeback. Whereas when single-player games come out that have really poor reception, thinking of Mass Effect Andromeda or Mighty Number 9 earlier, going back further, Alien Colonial Marines, games like that, they come out, they're really unpopular. The devs kind of launch a couple of patches to maybe improve some performance here and there, but it's harder to achieve the true comeback story, I think, with single-player games. What do you guys think about that?
I tend to agree. I think a single-player game that maybe could have been a candidate for having this kind of thing happen maybe would have been Batman Arkham Knight. Because that had massive launch troubles when that first came out. And the developer, which wasn't Warner Brothers Montreal, that was the mob that did Origins. I can't remember who it was for the other Arkham games. Rocksteady, that's it, yeah. So if they had turned around and actually gotten onto the fix for this game much quicker and not let it go on as long as it did, with the subsequent sort of PC port woes and that kind of stuff, they could have turned that into a success story, because that's definitely a good game. It just had a launch that was marred severely by a few bugs and issues with some of the platform launches. But they just took too long. The news cycle had moved on past that point, and because it wasn't a multiplayer game, they kind of didn't have a second bite at the apple. By then it was too late. So I think that the revenue stream is a big impact too, because with these single player games like Arkham Knight, they probably got the sales were probably okay, and then even if they fix the game, they've made a fairly decent number of sales. They're not relying on these sort of games as a service or ongoing microtransactions like the multiplayer games do. So there's more incentive, I think, for the devs to come in and fix the multiplayer games. Yeah, absolutely, because they've got a budget to do so after the fact, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a factor. Yeah. I think another common theme throughout a lot of the games that we were just talking about as well is the developers and the publishers kind of taking the attitude that they're gonna make it right no matter what. However long it takes them, however many iterative changes they need to make, whatever the cost, they've got a vision for how this game should be, and they know that it can be a success if they just believe in it, and they just keep working on content for it until they actually reach that point. So they don't give up on it and move on to the next title. It's something that, it can be polished as opposed to discarded and start over again with the next game that they've got on their release list. So I think that attitude counts for a great deal, because the general public also latches onto that, and they understand that the time that they invest in the game and the trust and the faith they have in the developer, if it's going to be rewarded, then they'll reward the developer in kind by speaking positively about the game and actually having that knock-on referral effect that you have when something starts to gain positive traction in the public eye. Because, just like negative feedback and poor game reviews and poor scores can really scuttle a game's chances of doing well and having that positive news spin, the opposite can be true too. It just takes a little bit longer for it to get going, and it needs to be a lot more consistent and over a longer period of time, I feel. But that lends people a lot of confidence if that's the case. So
it's difficult to pull off, though, especially when you have to answer to investors and shareholders, because piling more money onto a sunk cost is not something that's typically done. It's so easy to cut ties, especially after initial release when you've probably generated some revenue. So, yeah, those that stick with it, I'm guessing there's some very clear indicators that they can turn it into a successful thing and gain that trust back.
Yeah.
And also, maintaining franchise value might be a part of that too. If it's a game like Destiny that EA and the investors want to milk for 20 years, maybe they don't want that. They want to make sure that every version of Destiny leapfrogs onto the next one and everyone likes it.
Oh, particularly if any licensing is involved as well. Like if they've actually licensed a IP to build a game and it has issues on launch, they kind of have a vested interest in going back and trying to fix it if they want to maintain that relationship with whoever owns that property. Actually,
that Battlefront 2.
Yeah, that's been in the news again this week. I was just going to mention that because they've just relaunched the microtransactions in that game, and by all reports, it looks like now they've actually done it right. So
yeah, that's a stay tuned story. We could be, if we'd done this topic in a month or two's time, we might have been including Battlefront 2, but we have to wait and see.
Yeah, they certainly burned a lot of bridges last year though, so it's going to take some pretty major effort to get back on people's radar in the good books. But look, I mean, this is the start.
I'm skeptical.
Yeah, I am too. Super skeptical. I'd like
another
for it to work.
Interesting factor is the content creators and how they influence take up in the wider community, because you get some big names playing your game, whether it's by design or not, and enjoying it and playing it in an entertaining way. Suddenly you've got so many people watching.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, sort of grassroots enthusiasm for the game.
That's helped Fortnite because it slowly just drew in a crowd of people watching, going, "Oh, well, what are these people up to?" And seeing this new format of this game that didn't do so great as the zombie survival mode. It's a boost.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't take much
I wonder
either.
how much of it's by design.
It's like Christian, it's like when I commented to you last week that I noticed that I was on Twitch looking at sort of, which games were sort of, on the top streaming list for the day. And I was shocked to see Yakuza 0 was on there ahead of Overwatch.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was just like, what the fuck? And then when you and I sort of dug into it, we realised that it was largely the result of one or two sort of streamers, like one in particular who seemed like a variety streamer that had a huge following that just happened to be playing that game for the day. Yeah,
he was doing 6,000 out of the 8,000 total views or something on the one stream. Yep. And that can give like an injection into the sales of a game if you have a streamer like that who is really enthusiastic about it, and then that can lead to a little spike in the graph here and there.
Definitely. And appearances, it counts for a lot, so you can't ignore that kind of thing. Like companies and publishers that pay attention to what's going on in the Twitch world and YouTube to a certain extent as well, they do well to keep on top of that kind of thing. It does sometimes get a bit of momentum going again, so yeah.
Yeah, and keeping the communication channels open with your fans, being engaged, let people know so that
take
perhaps
feedback
less
seriously.
likely to drop off, or more likely to just keep in touch while things are simmering. let them know that you're listening to feedback, that you're working on things. A bit of communication can go a long way in keeping trust with the fan base and reassuring them that better change is coming.
Silence from devs can be absolutely deafening.
Oh, yeah. Reminds me of what happened when No Man's Sky launched. Like, that silence period did them no favours whatsoever. So, yeah. It's a tough one. I mean, sometimes, bad news is better than no news, but obviously it's best to avoid both if you can. So,
that's right.
Nice. All right. Well, there you go. Some of gaming's greatest comebacks, and that's obviously ignoring things that are not specifically games themselves. That might be a topic for another day. So, some of the greatest comebacks of maybe companies and consoles and things like that. That's a whole other story we could get into. It's a good one. But yeah, what do you think might make a comeback next? If you had to pick maybe one game that you'd like to see make a resurgence, do you think anything's likely to pop up again that has released and not done well in the last few years? Anything you can think of?
It's hard to think of examples. In my mind, it's just Battlefront 2. Battlefront 2 is like the big one. And then the other thing, I'm always keeping an eye on the other like collectible card games that are out there, like Eternal and Gwent and Shadowverse. And I'm waiting for one of those games to like have a big resurgence and go toe-to-toe with Hearthstone more. But so far, Hearthstone's just the premier product there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I want to see, and I'm not going to, is Mass Effect Andromeda DLC with Surprise Shepherd. That's pretty much it. That's what will bring me back. I miss my Shepherd.
Yep. I think you're dreaming.
Can't think of anything else. Yeah, 100%. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
Yeah. Oh,
No
man.
matter the canon in my head.
Absolutely. Look, I can't think of anything, honestly. Yeah, like everything I think is pretty much played its course at the moment. That's because I can't really think of anything that has failed in the last few years that I still give a shit about.
Really. That's right. Yeah, like part of them failing is that you don't think about them, you forget about them. So yeah,
maybe Shadow of Mordor. Maybe I don't know. Like if they do some stuff with that.
Oh, like is it Shadow of War?
Shadow of War. That's the one. Sorry. Yeah. Always get those names mixed up.
Silly names.
Yeah, they're a bit weird. So yeah.
Or Bruce.
Yeah, absolutely. Bruce the Chopper. All right. Well, anyway, if you've got thoughts on any of gaming's greatest comebacks and stories that you'd like to share from your perspective, make sure you email them into us. So you can hit us up at the usual mail at partyloaded.com. So if you want to be part of the show, you should write into that address and we will talk about stuff that you send us if it's appropriate to the content we have on our episodes. Of course, you can hit us up at the usual Facebook and Twitter as well. So Facebook, just search for Party Loaded. Twitter, we're at Party Loaded Show. And we do have a stack of content on YouTube, as well as all of the episodes of the show which go up there for consumption. If you prefer to listen to it there than elsewhere, you can minimize the window in the background, perhaps, while you're doing something else. You'll find that over at youtube.com/channelendgame. Plans for this week that do not involve sailing the high seas. Does anyone have anything?
What? I don't understand the question.
For me, it's just more Yakuza.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably more Sims.
More Sims as
Gonna
well?
see how many... Yeah.
See how many more
much I can
toilets you can
them.
break?
Oh my God, the sagas never end. Getting them filthy rich so they can move to the countryside.
Oh, okay.
Have a big family. It's going to be screaming babies everywhere if I've got anything to say about it.
Yeah, interesting.
And I'm going to be tuning in on Friday. Blizzard is doing a card reveal stream for the next Hearthstone expansion. So they're going to be revealing a bunch more new cards. So I'm going to be tuning into that.
Oh, man, I'm going to be out at a company lunch. I'm going to miss out on that. What time is it streaming? Do you know?
I don't know what time. It's probably in the middle of the night for us because it's US.
Oh, that's fine then.
I'm not
That's
sure.
totally okay.
Yeah. I have to check that though.
Luke doesn't sleep.
That's it. If it's during the middle of the night, I'm sorted. That's awesome. We can stay up and compare notes at like 2 a.m.
Yeah, let's check the time and maybe do that.
Yeah, I'm super keen. I did that the last couple and that was super fun. So yeah,
Good luck.
It's always fun being part of that. I need to sort of move into another decent single player game to play when we're not sort of pirating together. So I might. I was actually contemplating going back to Final Fantasy 15 and trying to knock that one out because I never actually got to finish that one off. I kind of paused on it while they fixed up the what was it, Chapter 13? They did the big adjustment on.
Yeah.
Persona, dude. Persona 5.
I need Mimo to finish it so I can borrow the disc.
Oh my God, just buy it.
I could do
Like
that.
100 hours of fun.
We could do that, yeah. Anyway,
Yep.
plenty of things to put on the list. I might just go for something easy, like some low-hanging fruit, just knock off a couple more games. I have actually been playing a bunch of Metroid Samus Returns on my journeys into work at the moment because I haven't quite finished that one on 3DS yet either. So come back next week, I'll probably be able to tell you about the end of that game because I'm nearly there. That's such a fucking good game. Anyway,
Okay.
Too many games.
That's all great, but I need to go loot and pillage.
Yep.
So,
yar! All right, let's wrap it
Yarr.
there. All right, well, thanks everybody
eat
for
my
listening.
vitamin C.
We'll
Bye-bye.
see you again next week for no doubt some
See ya.
party goodness. Until then, yar.
Bye-bye.
The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.